2020. I know for all of us it's a little bit early, except maybe if we have some friends from Asia, it's better timing. So we are very proud to have this second masterclass on leadership. And I want, first of all, to thank a lot BCG to make it possible, to make it happen. Thanks a lot to Fanny and all the team of BCG to have this event be organized and taking place. We all feel that leadership is even more important at this period of time, in this, I would say, quite special, not to say another word, ecosystem in which we are navigating. And I think it was not the plan at the beginning, frankly speaking, because we spoke with Fanny before COVID, and it came a different way. But I think it shows and that in difficult times, that's the time where the leadership skills are the most important and most relevant. So I do not want to spend more time except to pass to Fanny and to thanks again everybody to be here. And don't hesitate when you will be in the panel discussion in a few minutes to ask as many questions as you can on the chat. But all that is going to be precised. To you, Fanny.
Thank you, Claude. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back with you today. And thank you for making the time at such a close time to vacation. I hope the second lockdown is for the French people is not too hard on you and that everybody's safe. Thank you very much to the French INSEAD Alumni Association for inviting us and partnering with BCG on these masterclasses about leadership in the new reality. And again, let me thank you warmly, Claude, who is heading career management at the association, for hosting us today. I'm Fanny Potier, Associate Director and Partner at BCG, author of Pro on Leadership in 2020 and former INSEAD MBA. With a long experience in people and leadership strategy consulting, I am convinced that the human factor is at the heart of innovative, agile, and sustainable organizations. I accompany companies in their strategic transformation, placing people at the center. And before introducing the great panel of speakers we have today, I just wanted to say a few words on how the session will happen today. So there will be a roundtable of about 50 minutes. And then you will be sent in subgroups, in breakouts, to have some discussions about some of the insights that the speakers will have shared with you. If you'd like to ask us some questions, please use the functionality available for you, which is the chat. And Claude and I and others will monitor that during the discussion so that we can pick on some of your questions. I am delighted to have with us today another superb panel of speakers. Some of you may know that it's the second masterclass today. First of all, a warm welcome to Lise Kingo. And I want to quote Erik Rasmussen from Sustainia. Somehow, Lise's mindset and approach to sustainable leadership is an inspiring lesson about what it takes to make fundamental transformation of business models and philosophy. In the world of sustainability, Lise Kingo is a pioneer. She meets the basic criteria, a person who prepares for others to follow. Lise is currently independent board director at Sanofi. She is chair of the Blueprint for Denmark initiative and member of the advisory board for humanitarian and development at the Novo Nordisk Foundation in Denmark. She is former CEO and executive director of the United Nations Global Compact, a position she held since 2015. Prior to this, during her long career at Novo Nordisk, she served as chief of staff, executive president, and member of the executive management team since 2002. She is certified as a director with INSEAD in France. She is a true citizen of the world. Throughout her career, she has earned positions in Denmark, the United Kingdom, Norway, the Netherlands, and the United States. She has a humanistic university education focusing on the history of religions and Greek and Roman cultures. She has a deep-rooted understanding of the origins of who we are with this, the norms, the values, and the principles that drive human behavior. I am also glad that Marie Humblot-Ferrero is back with us today. Marie is Managing Director and Partner at BCG in Paris, leading BCG People Strategy for Western Europe and a core member of BCG Healthcare and Operations Practices. Since joining BCG in 2007, Marie has developed two passions in her career, biopharma and people. She has supported many leaders in large-scale transformation at international level. And last but not least, I'm also very pleased to welcome Vinciane Beauchene, who is also a partner and managing director based in our BCG Paris office. She leads BCG People and Organization Practice for Western Europe, Africa, and South America. In recent years, Vinciane has notably focused on supporting our clients moving to Agile at scale or succeeding in their digital transformation with all leadership talent and skills implication. Before asking some specific questions to our audience, I just wanted to start with a few introduction words on leadership. So we have started this cycle of masterclass on leadership with a discussion on complexity and how leaders can deal with it. And the recording is available for you on LinkedIn if you'd like to hear that. For the second masterclass, we wanted to deep dive more specifically on the what of leadership. That is the unique leadership traits useful to succeed in different leadership situations. I personally believe that everybody has leadership, and it is our choice to demonstrate and develop it from our base of strength. For this to happen, we need to select roles, positions, situations where we will demonstrate our leadership and develop it even further. That being said, in this complex, complicated world we live in, leaders are victims of many contradictory injunctions. And leaders are like athletes in need of excelling in many disciplines. They run marathons, they swim in deep and troubled waters, they need to coach and inspire very diverse groups of people. There are many leadership frameworks available to describe leadership qualities needed to succeed in different contexts, and we won't spend too much time on that. Lise may share some insights from a recent survey done between Russell Reynolds and the UN Global Compact on sustainable leadership. BCG has just conducted a survey on leadership in the new reality across a European panel. About 100 INSEAD alumni participated to the survey, and we wanted to thank you warmly for that. The results will be published in 2021, so please watch out for them. We will pick on some insights during the conversation, but first and foremost, what we share here is coming from our experience of being leaders and working with leaders. The crisis has been a true test for leadership. Many leaders have risen to the occasion, bringing much needed clarity and mobilizing resources against critical actions. That being said, the leaders who stand out have done this while leading and communicating with great care, empathy, and humility. In the vast majority of cases, leaders now face enormous short-term pressure to improve business results, drive transformation, or both. A broad set of stakeholders, including customers, employees, investors, suppliers, are challenging companies to respond to changing societal values, concerns about climate change, and finite natural resources, and economic and political instability. Successful businesses will be those that meet the needs of as many people as possible, utilize as few resources as possible, and engage with and are responsive to as many of their stakeholders as possible. Under these circumstances, organizations cannot hope to transform successfully unless they do so in a way that demonstrates humanity. The experiences of those that have carried out and sustained successful transformation pre-pandemic offers important lessons that point to the urgency of a human-centered approach that focuses on the head, the heart, and the hands. The challenge for leaders now is to sustain, if not intensify, the focus on all of those three elements. Turning now to Marie, and picking maybe on some insights of our leadership survey, could you comment on what leadership was needed, demonstrated, and lacking during COVID? And how can leaders develop their resilience and that of their team in current times?
Thank you, Fanny. As you mentioned, we've just conducted a survey on leadership in the new reality across a European panel. And I wanted to join Fanny in thanking you for also answering to this survey. Results will be published early next year. Watch out for them. I will not fully disclose the result, but just wanted to highlight some of the trends. First, I want to come back on the framework that Fanny laid down earlier. Challenges that companies and leaders face can indeed be crystallized around the head, the heart, and the hands. The head, because leaders have to envision the company vision for the future, identify the priorities and the strategy to get there. The heart, because leaders have to inspire and empower people. And last, the hands, leaders have to execute and set actions to deliver improvements and results. Companies that attend all three areas are nearly 3 times as likely to show sustained breakthrough improvements as those that they do not focus deliberately on one of them. That being said, in normal times, we found that most organizations undergoing transformation quite naturally address the head, 69% of them. Slightly less, half of the companies, 44, focus on the hands. And the heart is the most neglected of the three areas. Only 25% of companies focus on it. This is probably not new to some of you, and this is partly due to our education that equip us for the head, the strategic thinking, anticipation of trends, focus on consumer needs, etc. And somehow for the hands, laying down the master plans with actions and timelines. But we're not that well equipped for the heart. However, successful companies depend on people who are engaged and motivated to go above and beyond. People cannot be treated as a mean to an end. And that's what we've seen crystallized in the crisis. What we've seen in our last discussions with leaders around the world is that they are experiencing a shift to people now consistently valuing the leadership traits that relate to the art, much more than the others, and not equally as it could have been the case before. This strong shift to valuing human and people-centered leadership is something we saw coming, notably with the increased need for empowerment, for a sense of purpose, but it really fully crystallized with the crisis, and there is no way back, I have to say. This crisis was so intense, so moving for every one of us, that there would be a before and an after in terms of leadership. And this is a huge opportunity for companies to embed heart into their norms and practices.
Se ele saiu para a escola,
Employees will put their loyalty in leaders that show indeed consideration and empathy, and being concerned about the well-being of the staff, showing consideration and respect, have a good rapport with their team is now become the new norm. This has even become, I have to say, a prerequisite for the employees. It could be seen as the first proof point for an employee that will allow them or not actually to adhere to anything else from the company. So it's really looking at how I am treated before even looking at the strategy, the vision, the purpose, and the operational decisions. And looking at the heart and showing and displaying the heart is also foundational to develop resilience of the teams. And during the crisis, we've seen that leaders that stand out have, of course, provided the much needed clarity on the objectives, that's the head. They have mobilized the resources against critical actions and in urgency, that's the hands. But they have done so by leading and communicating with great care, empathy, and humility, which is really focusing on the heart. So how to create such a context at scale? Well, leader needs to demonstrate care for people whose lives have been disrupted. There could be through upskilling support, through efforts to bolster employee mental as well as physical welfare, or flex work options. Leaders need to deliberately focus on connections and relationships to help provide a foundation for well-being and resilience during what promises to be a difficult time. The second thing is that leaders need to double down on activating purpose to inspire employees and connect with customers and communities alike. The disruption created by this crisis has led many people to ponder big questions. And beyond the need to secure a paycheck, people are yearning to find meaning in their work. And lastly, leaders need to create an empowering culture where people can do their best work and be their best selves at work. And to do that, they really need to embed hard in the organization. How? They might reduce or eliminate a number of sub-steering committees, a number of meetings, so that to easier the work to be done. They can also solicit some dissenting opinions in every discussion, encourage team members to provide their viewpoint, and explain how they will test it before leaders actually offer them. And senior leaders can also seek face time with one or two other leaders every day, even really below and embedded in the organization, to show support and see how they are doing. If I have really kind of learned something that I guess I knew, but that was fully crystallized by the crisis, is that it's really, I mean, what people really are asking for is leaders that show a lot of care, empathy, and that have actually, that are leading with their heart.
Thank you, Marie. And as you mentioned, a gift is better than the promise of a gift in terms of leadership. So that's, I think, one of the things that you shared here. Turning to Vinciane, many of our clients want to become more agile. And I wanted to ask you if there is something like an agile leader, and what does it mean in particular to lâcher prise and to develop others, and to, again, make sure that you embed this agility across the organization.
Thanks a lot, Fanny. Can you hear me well?
Very well.
Great. So the question of agility, I think that's a great question, and if I may, I will maybe start with a small sideway on what is agile and what we call agile. Indeed, you know, the feeling I have is that agility today has become kind of a buzzword that is more and more used, and that basically means am I able to adapt very quickly to changing situations, which is definitely, you know, à l'ordre du jour in the current context. It's sometimes even used, you know, at some of our clients as a nice word to say, okay, we're not able to make decisions and we change our mind all the time. In fact, you know, when you look at the roots of agility and what we call agile, truly, at the beginning, it's really been, you know, a delivery method that was developed in IT that was aiming at reducing uncertainty and risk on large projects. And if you apply that more broadly in the organization, what you see and what I would call agile is the ability to work with small teams that are more autonomous and that can adapt pretty swiftly to changing circumstances on the ground. So if I use that term, you know, I would say an agile leader is basically anyone who seeks to better empower his teams so that they are autonomous and can react to changing circumstances on the ground. And any leader who is truly focused on the value creation in the eyes of the customer, you know, which are the two, I think, two important parts of agility, which is aligned and autonomous teams and focus on customer value creation. Now, when we talk about agility, another frequent buzzword that comes around is servant leader. So this idea that, you know, in an agile context, or as soon as you want to build autonomy for the teams, you need to act as a servant leader, coaching the teams, developing their skills, etc. I think that's a very fair point, but I must admit, I personally don't like the servant leadership term that much, because it really reduces, in my experience, the role of the leader. I think the first role of a leader in an uncertain context is actually to promote alignment. So to have a very clear vision and to be able to articulate what is it that will create value and what is it that the teams need to deliver or do. That doesn't mean that it needs to be in micromanagement. It doesn't mean that the leader needs to be entering into how you are going to deliver that value, but promoting alignment as a leader and making sure that you have a vision that is clearly articulated and that shows the way is, in my experience, the most important skill of a leader. And that resonates very well with the head that Marie was referring to. Then once you have that, indeed, the other critical dimension is this ability to support the teams on two dimensions, actually. One dimension, which is really like developing their skills and coaching them so that they get the autonomy to deliver against the value that you have set. And the other dimension is to remove obstacles. So very proactively looking at anything that would slow down the team and trying to get rid of it. So I would say, just to wrap it up, Agile leader, as I think first and foremost, is about the vision and the ability to create alignment in the teams. And then is indeed around the coaching and the upskilling dimension and the removing obstacles proactively.
Thank you very much, Vinciane. Now turning to Lise, well, we are interested in your reactions to what Marie and Vinciane have just shared with us. And particularly, if we can take the sustainability angle, and given your long experience in sustainability, have you observed differentiating characteristics, motivations, competencies, actions of sustainability leaders? And can you share any tips based on your experience, again, on how to develop such specific quality if they exist?
Thank you so much, Fanny. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you today. I really enjoyed the comment from Vinciane and Marie and the importance about talking about what real leadership means in times of change, because this year has definitely been remarkable in many different ways for all of us, I believe. One thing that I feel has happened this year is that the importance of running a business in a sustainable, responsible way has become mainstream in a way, at least I haven't seen it before. And Fanny, it is true that I have been working in this agenda for more than 30 years now. I started by attending the UN Summit on Sustainable Development in Rio in '92, and I guarantee you back then, none of us really knew what this word sustainable mean. So a lot has happened since then. And I think it's very positive that it seems that most people agree that Milton Friedman's statement that the only social responsibility of a business is to generate profit has been put to rest. It doesn't work anymore. That's not the way progressive business people run their businesses. So I think that's very positive. But it, of course, starts a debate on what are then the motivations and the characteristics of business leaders that have to run companies today according to sustainability principles. And to come back and respond to your question, I mean, to cut a very long story short, at least in my experience, and also as we have lined out in the Russell Reynolds Global Compact study that you mentioned, it looks as if there are like 3 categories of sustainability leaders that feel this is the right way to lead, but they come from different motivations. So there's clearly one group that are just the born believers, that are very, how should I say, holistic, stakeholder-oriented, innovative, and also systems-oriented in the way they naturally want to lead a company. So it's easy for these people because it's their intuition to lead in what we would call a sustainable way. But there are also another group of interesting leaders that you could call the convinced leaders. They are typically leaders that have worked in different parts of the world. they have been exposed to some of the environmental and social challenges that are out there. So they have felt on their own body that, you know, something is wrong. I mean, we are in the process of destroying the planet. There are too many people that live under too poor social conditions. Something have to be done. And that's normally a little bit of a longer process, but I think a very good road to, you know, concluding, okay, I must run my company in a more sustainable way. And then there's a small group that you could call the awoken, for example. And that's typically people that get a little bit of a shock because they are suddenly confronted with a big problem that they hadn't seen coming. So that's CEOs and other business people that are suddenly confronted with a big bribery case, with a big human rights issue, where they basically in the crisis understand that it has an impact on their business, how they are faring in a societal and in an environmental manner. And I think a number of business people are grappling with this today because now they are also being confronted by the investment community, the financial community that want them to document that they are a solid, responsible company. So Fanny, I think people come to become sustainability leaders from different motivations. But clearly, I think this whole idea of being long-term oriented, of being a systems thinker, of understanding how things are impacting on each other is very important. And I do feel that the Sustainable Development Goals, these 17 wonderful icons that were adopted by the UN 5 years ago, and the Paris Climate Agreement have both helped many business people really understand what this is all about, because it's laid out in a relatively simple way. And it's providing a very clear lighthouse for the future. So business people cannot say, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what the direction is here. I mean, we do have a common agenda for the world. So the trick is now to make sure that leadership is understood in your organization. And I think the good news is that also comes out of our study that sustainable leadership is something that can easily be learned. You don't have to be the born leader to become a great sustainability leader. So the importance of good training in the organization at all levels from the very start, on environment, on climate, on human rights, on labor issues, is a really important investment for the company. I think I'll end here, Fanny. Yeah.
Yeah, you did. Very inspirational, and we certainly agree with the point that you were making, that the light is paved and the road is paved. Sorry, with the SDGs, and we'll come back to that. Just picking on one question from the audience, and maybe to you, Vinciane, could you just explain a little bit how to address agility with the heart, especially when we are all working remote, or most of us are still working remote? Very good question.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much for the question. It's true that when you think about agility, to come back to the framework that Marie was presenting, the head and the hands are very clear. You know, the head is this alignment dimension that you have through daily stand-ups, through the backlog, to talk about some agile rituals. So it's very clear, and the hands seems also pretty easy to put in place, because agility is really about, you know, delivering concrete products and value in short iteration. So those two dimensions are very clear. I think the heart dimension is a bit more hidden in agility. Where I think it can be addressed, I see two main dimensions. The first dimension is the fact, that heart is really about caring and the social connectivity. And I think, that as part of that, the way that Agile pushes you to organize in small teams that are dedicated, working together and learning to work together effectively, it really promotes social bonding, because it's honestly difficult to bond if you are very fragmented, working with 200 people in large projects. But the sense of belonging can be stronger when you're in a small team, used to aligned on the same objective and working towards a common goal. So I think that in a way, this hard dimension is favored by the idea of working in small teams dedicated with a common purpose. The second dimension I think that supports the heart is as part of the Agile rituals that you have, because as maybe some of you know, Agile is codified in some traditional meetings that you are going to do on a regular basis. One critical piece of those rituals is what is called the retrospective. So retrospective is basically every month the team comes together to discuss about the last month and how things went. And this meeting is in stone. Every team has to do it. And it is an opportunity to discuss not so much about what we are working on, but really it's an opportunity to discuss about the team dynamics. So this is a moment where the team takes a bit of time to think about themselves, think about how people are feeling, think about how they are working together and what they could do better. And it's actually usually also a time to celebrate successes. So I think this retrospective moment, which is once per month, is already a good starting point to put the heart dimension at the forefront, because it really is for the leader an opportunity to spend time with the teams, to listen about how they are feeling, and to take time to celebrate the successes of the team. Now, once per month is obviously not enough, but I think that at least it's a kind of guardrail that ensures you that you are taking this time and dedicating time to it. And retrospective is usually 4 hours. So it's really an important moment, which I think is good for keeping the morale high, on top of having this kind of bonding logic of a small team. And just to react on one point, the heart dimension could be felt a little bit as a gadget. I think all of us, having gone through the crisis, realize that it's not a gadget at all and that it's critical. But we've actually demonstrated in numbers that it's critical. When you look at the productivity of a team and you ask its members to what extent they feel socially connected and bond, those that say that they feel socially connected with their teams, with their company, are twice more productive than those that say they are not. So this heart dimension is really critical. If not, for clear values, it is also a true business take, I would say.
Thank you, Vinciane. Going back to Marie, and we'll take some other questions from the panel after this new round of questions. We hear that to succeed, we need more collaboration in organizations. How can you develop as a leader collaboration and support it over time?
Thank you for that question, Fanny. And when talking about collaboration, I have to cite Yves Morieux, that probably some of you know, and I've watched their TED Talks. And Yves Morieux says that it's really thanks to cooperations that the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts, and that this is not poetry, this is not philosophy, this is math. I really like this sentence, because really, I mean, collaboration and cooperation is at the core of what we need in this world that is always more difficult. And cooperation is really what happens when people work directly with each other to do their work. So they need to depend on each other. They cannot work on isolation, and they need to leverage the complementarities of the different people to perform their jobs. Cooperation also means that when I solve a problem, I take into account not only my own constraints, but also the needs of others, the situation of others that will be affected by my solution. And also I take into account as much as possible the end results, the impact on the overall outcomes from a company viewpoint, from a department viewpoint, from the division viewpoint. So I just see the whole thing as a whole, and I integrate the larger context and constraints in my job. It is worth noting that in today's world, problems have become more complex, requiring deep expertise in multiple areas, combining teams across several geographies, and with tight resolution timelines. And complex problem solving, which is one of the skills that are always more and more needed today in the environment, cannot be managed without cooperation. So how can leaders support and foster collaboration? I would just give you 4 things. The first, that you need to reinforce people who are integrators. Integrators are those individuals that influence and make a difference in the work that others do. They are often at the point of tensions, having an interest in making things better, in collaborating, but sometimes they don't have the power to do so. So you need to really identify those people and give them sufficient power to be able to manage the trade-offs that are needed to perform collaboration. The second thing is that you need to eliminate self-reliance and isolation and increase reciprocity. We often talk about empowerment, autonomy, but we less talk cooperation. And autonomy doesn't mean being fully independent and building kingdoms. It means that you have the means that you need. And as Vinciane was saying, in the Agile world, you create teams that will work for an end, but they are relying on each other. There is cooperation inside of that, because self-reliant people, they don't depend on anybody and they don't need to cooperate to deliver. So you need to set clear objectives, stimulate mutual interest to cooperate, making each person's success dependent on the success of others. Sometimes it's also may need that you need to reduce resources or to share the resources across different people, and you need to create new networks of interactions. The third thing is that you need to extend the shadow of the future. What does it mean? It means that people need to experience directly the consequences that result from their behavior, from their outcomes. So for example, you would tie a project leader to being the after-sales manager once the product is designed. So he will directly suffer and live with the consequences of what he's being doing. And lastly, you need to reward those who cooperate, increasing the payoff of all when they cooperate in a beneficial way, and on the contrary, establish penalty for those who fail to cooperate. Now, you may ask yourself, how do we foster collaboration when remote and hybrid work has become the norm? And it is indeed a challenge. Proximity is a key factor for cooperation. In a recent survey that BCG has performed on 12,000 people around the world, around 75% of employees said that during the pandemic, they have been able to maintain or improve productivity on their individual tasks, such as analyzing data, writing presentation, executing administrative tasks. And this is understandable because when you are home, and you may have your kids, but if you have in an environment without any noise, if I can say, you are more productive. But on the collaborative tasks, including the exchanges with coworkers, working in teams, interacting with clients, the number is much lower, and only half of the respondents have said they were able to maintain or improve their productivity on those tasks. So it is important to note that, again, proximity is a factor of cooperation, but proximity is not only related to collocation. It also depends on having a purposeful, coherent, and continuously maintained array of interactions, irrespective of the location of each individual. For some of us, proximity was probably making up for some deficiencies in our professional relationships, and some productive relationships were indeed an automatic byproduct of proximity. But with the lockdown, we've all realized that we need to consciously increase connectedness with all the stakeholders. This does not happen by chance anymore at the cafeteria. The pandemic remote work was an experiment that forced all the managers and all the leaders to focus directly on this relational dimension of work, because we were now unable to rely on proximity. We need to invest in what we call connectedness by doing several things. First, expanding the number of people that you interact with, across the organization, even 1 or 2 levels down from the direct reports that you have. And the second thing, and probably also most importantly, you need to change the way of interacting. Instead of the long formal meetings with a lot of passive participants that you may end up discussing with in the cafeteria around a coffee, you need to shorten those meetings, have more one-on-one interactions, focusing on what matters. What are the priorities? What are the worries and the challenges? What are the needs of the people? Which is, in other words, the essence of work. This kind of clarity is precisely how managers and leaders should exercise their leadership and value add in complex business environments by engaging directly with their teams, helping them successfully navigate the multiplicity of priorities, the targets, the milestones, and the problems, make intelligent trade-offs between them, and optimize the performance across a complex set of objectives. This is the real work of leadership, I would say.
Thank you, Marie. I think this, I want to come back to you, Vinciane, because some of the points that Marie made around, how, well, first of all, how to collaborate or cooperate in organizations with this additional complexity of working hybrid or fully remote for some of the people. Are there some good learnings from agility, some rituals, some tips, some things that can be leveraged from agility, from working agile that would be useful? And we have actually some questions on the difficulty of making all of that work in this remote world or hybrid work that we see coming.
Yeah, so absolutely, and I think the rituals or the meetings that I'm going to describe indeed come from the Agile methodology, but my experience is that you don't need to be organized in Agile or working on an Agile project to be able to implement them and actually benefit from them. So that's the good part of it. And I see more and more companies shifting to those rituals, which, by the way, are not totally out of the blue or not groundbreaking. You will see as I describe them that they seem quite obvious. I think what is really powerful about them is that, first of all, and that's why they are called rituals, they are pre-planned meetings. So, they are set in stone in the calendars, and they force the teams and the leaders to have those discussions, because it's one thing to have a lot of good intentions and agree on the fact that you are going to need meetings to think about the strategy, and you are going to have meetings to think about continuous improvement and care about your employees, etc., etc. But the reality is that often when you're taken by the urgency of the situation and the day-to-day business, you just don't take the time to invest in those dimensions. So the fact that you have those rituals that are really like set in stone in the agenda and the calendar, and that you are going to make happen, is, I think, in itself a good practice. The other aspect that is interesting, I think, about those rituals is that they have a very clear objective. So you don't mix the objectives in the different meetings. You have a clear meeting that is meant to align the team on what we need to do today and what is preventing us from getting the work done. You have a clear meeting that is about continuous improvement and how do we work better. And you have a clear meeting that is about discussing with the customer to understand what he values. And I think, that setting very clear objectives for each of the meetings that you're running makes it more efficient. So if I try to make it very concrete, the type of rituals that that are used as part of agile projects, and that I think could be used by any team that wants to be more effective, notably in a remote setting, is one of those meetings is called the daily stand-up. So you could do it daily or you could do it weekly, depending on what you need. But the idea is to say, let's keep 15 minutes and no more than 15 minutes. Actually, the real challenge is keeping it to 15 minutes and not running over. Let's take 15 minutes every day at the beginning of the day to discuss as a team about our priorities, our to-do list, and align on who does what. That is notably very effective when you're in a remote setting because it ensures that everyone is going to work in the same direction and that everyone understands what the others are doing, which is critical to a cooperation, as Marie was saying. So this one is, I think, quite interesting and not very time consuming because the challenge is you shouldn't go over 15 minutes. And by the way, that's why it's called a stand-up meeting, because you get tired more quickly if you're standing up. So the likelihood that you're going to run over and spend 2 hours discussing about the priorities is lower. That's one of the meetings. I discussed about the retrospective, which I think is another great practice because it forces leaders to take this time to celebrate successes and discuss about the team dynamic. And we often tend to discuss about the content of the work, but not so much about the team dynamic. So saving time to discuss about how we work together and how we could cooperate better and what are the team norms is, I think, very important, notably in a remote setting where you cannot do that implicitly by just spending time together and adjusting in real life and real time. So having an explicit discussion about how do we want to work together, who has kids to bring to school, who has important assignments or moments, and how do we adjust, and do you prefer mails or SMS or phone calls? Discussing about the employee preferences, the team norms, and how we want to work together is, I think, very important. A last one, which I think is very important, is called the demo. And this is really making sure that on a regular basis, you force the team to have an interaction with the end user or the customer to get feedback on what you're doing. And this is kind of obvious when you're working on a product or a clear deliverable, so when you're a project team, it's kind of healthy to sometimes go and see the end user or the customer and get his feedback on, is this product useful for you, valuable for you, and are we prioritizing the right features? It seems obvious, it's not always done in projects, but I think, even if you're in an enabling team, even if you're part of an HR organization or part of a finance organization, having the instinct and the rigor to regularly go and discuss with your end users to understand if what you're doing is valuable to them and if they are satisfied with the service that you are providing is, I think, a very good ritual, in fact, and a very good guardrail for not spending time on things that the end user is not valuing. So I would say, those three things, I think, daily stand-up or the simple logic of stand-up, which is taking time to align, demonstration, which is taking time to ensure that what you are doing is valued by your end users, and retrospective, which is like the care moment of Agile, spending time to understand how the team can work well together and building pride on the successes that have been achieved is, I think, three key rituals inspired by Agile, but that work in any context.
Thank you, Vinciane, and I think we couldn't agree more that those are very useful tips because, as we mentioned before, I mean, a gift is better than the promise of a gift. So all in all, I mean, making cooperation work, making the heart work, anything that we discussed previously is just giving proofs to your people that you're actually living with those values, right? Going back to Lise, there has been some questions, and I think in the audience, and I think I will summarize that with one question. The business sector is crucial for making the Sustainable Development Goals a reality in 2030. You would agree to that. And we have 10 years to deliver. And I think we can fairly say that it is the time to ramp up both expectations and actions around these. Having pushed this agenda for so long, can you share your views on how leaders can significantly increase their ambition and fully embed the SDGs into business strategy, operations, and stakeholder engagement, especially in the current times that we describe, where there is so much volatility, a lot of pressure on cost, on stock price, etc.
Thank you, Fanny. Absolutely.
Hard question, sorry.
One simple question. So I think the starting point is that, you know, nobody expected that we would have a pandemic and an extremely challenging year. And it has been amazing to watch, how should I say, the negative impact that the pandemic has had basically on all the 17 global goals. So for example, in the poverty area, we are basically pushed at least 10 years back. There are now more than 90 million extremely poor people in the world. And in many ways, I think the COVID experience for all of us has been a magnifying glass for many more people to really understand all the problems that the world is facing. And that also goes for business people, even though they of course have a daily challenge in how to get their business successfully through this pandemic period in the world. In terms of what is the best way of really ensuring that you prepare your company for the future, which means you prepare your company for being aligned with challenges and expectations in society. You develop a good social contract with your stakeholders. I think there are basically 10 simple steps that any company can address, no matter if it's a multinational or if it's a small company. The first step deals with what we are discussing today, which is the leadership dimension. I think introducing responsible business practices in a company is all about leadership. It will not succeed unless there is full backup among top management. The CEO, the chairman of the board really needs to feel that this is important. You cannot be sort of half responsible or half sustainable. It's really a philosophy that has to go through everything you do in the company. So that's number one. And that's why it's important that we are thinking about what is actually motivating, characterizing a sustainable leader, and how do we develop this characteristic in new leaders. So to cut a long story short, I think the 3 elements you need to look at is first, anchoring responsibility at a strategic level in the company, in the purpose, in the governance, and in the corporate business strategy. And make sure that the business strategy is anchored around a core of responsibility ambitions, preferably illustrated by a set of the Sustainable Development Goals. That is what we see as best practice these days. Of course, anchored in solid universal principles like human rights, labor principles, and so on. When you have that in place, you need to make sure that you cascade this into the entire operations of the company. So the production strategy, the investment, the corporate finance strategy, the research and development strategy needs to pick up these responsibility principles that are now part of the corporate strategy. And of course, within the whole leadership and human rights area, you have to make sure that, for example, in terms of remuneration, everyone in the company are remunerated not only on the financial performance, but also on the goals that have been set up on climate, on the environment, on social issues as well. And you have to make sure that also the corporate finance department understand this agenda and can make sure that the foreign direct investments, for example, of the company is supporting energy efficiency, renewable energy, and so on. And also that the pensions of all the employees are invested in, how should I say, responsible investment opportunities. So every unit in the organization will have a sustainability agenda. And after that, and as the final and third important element, you can begin to communicate and report and apply your sustainability business strategy in the way you create partnerships. The problem is that a number of companies these days are starting in the reverse order. So they are beginning with reporting and communicating and putting up a very nice website that shows all the 17 global goals. That is a recipe for being accused for blue washing or rainbow washing, as some people call it these days. And I would really advise companies to start from the strategic level and to ensure that there's full commitment in the top management of the organization and that the whole leadership dimension is in place first. So Fanny, I hope that responded to your question. I want to add on a little bit more of a personal note that, you know, having to drive this agenda in an organization has probably become easier today because it's more of a mainstream theme. But there's still a lot of challenges, and it's still a globally lead of mainly really large companies that are driving this agenda. There are also many others, but they are sort of, you know, really at the forefront. So for leaders inside the company that has to drive this agenda, it's tough to drive because you have to be a pretty challenging change leader. It is a change from a more financial success strategy to driving a business in a holistic way. So you will get some resistance and you will be sort of pushed back on many occasions. So I just want to bring up that, you know, being a change agent and probably having to also become a little bit of a tempered radical, becoming stronger and stronger all the time after having experienced quite a lot of pushback and resistance, is the name of the game still in driving this change agenda, and I would say any other change agenda. But I think it's worth it, as I'm sure many of us already know.
Wow, thank you very much, Lise. Again, this is very inspirational, and I'm sorry, I've said that many times before, but I couldn't agree more. And the point around being a change agent and having the courage to stand up for your conviction is a very, very important one, I believe. And it's a nice closing word for this part of the discussion where with this roundtable. I just want to, before we go back to you guys in the audience, and please stay with us because the second moment of the masterclass is for you. And this is what makes it a masterclass, actually. I just want to thank very much Vinciane for her sharing of experience around agility. And Vinciane will have to drop off the discussion. So thank you very much, Vinciane, for having been there with us this morning. And Lise, in particular, very, very warm thank you for all the points that you've shared with us. Very again, very inspirational. And I think I would encourage all of us in this call to follow your example and to help move forward the sustainability agenda as change agents and have the courage to do that. So thank you very much to both of you. And guys, please bear with us because we're going back to the second part of the discussions where we wanted to give you space all together in subgroups to take away some of the insights that were shared by Vinciane, Marie, and Lise. So Juliana is going to send us in breakouts in a couple of minutes. I'm just going to spend a few minutes on the instructions because they were not understood well the previous time. So this is the time for you. So the breakouts are for you. There will be a number of you in any breakout. There won't be in each one of them someone from the panel because we are not numerous enough to do that. But some groups will have Marie, Claude, myself to be with them. There's no formal facilitation, right? I don't know if you paid attention, but we sent you a pre-read, which is essentially the Fortune top 20 leaders ranking. And we wanted to give that as a starting point, but I'm sure you have many other leaders in mind that may be closer to you. And just discuss together in the breakout what you find inspirational in the leader that you pick as an example, and that's what you would like to take away from this example. And also just to be true, because nobody's perfect, what not to take away from these people. And you can also pick a person who is absolutely not a role model. This is fine. So just have a free conversation between yourself, guys, in light of what we shared, and just pick the inspirational leaders or not, and just share between you what you find inspirational and what you don't find inspirational from those people. After 20 minutes, you will be asked to come back in plenary. So make sure that you click the right button, which is go back to plenary, and Juliana is going to send us a prompt for that. And we'll take 5 minutes to close the masterclass. So see you soon in the breakout. Juliana, if you can just send us in the breakout, that would be great. Like the time was way too short, so I was just so yin yang. I'll get back to you on some of the points that you were making because I thought you made a very interesting point about different personality types in remote and hybrid. So thank you very much, all of you, for having been with us this morning. So I don't want to use slides, but I'll use them anyway because it's an interesting way to ask for the usefulness from your perspective of this masterclass. So I just want you to tell me and tell us, either using the chat or the camera with the signal, just show me a hand on the count of 3. Did you find that the time you spent with us was useful? And I'm not going to comment on the number of fingers. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3. Show me a hand. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really great to have you. Very interesting conversation. I just want to close with, remember, a gift is better than the promise of a gift. And especially in this time of the year when we're coming for Christmas, when we're coming to Christmas, for those who are going to celebrate Christmas, this is a very important catchphrase, especially if you have kids. So wishing all of you a very good vacation. I hope you will take some vacation after a very, very complicated year and difficult one. Hopefully 2021 will be a little bit better than 2020, even though 2020 had this lots of interesting stuff for us, and especially these master classes, which were really, really nice. And we'll be back on January. So I don't know if you had a chance to register already, but the third masterclass will be on transformative leaders, and we'll take some of the points actually that were discussed today and the previous one. And it's going to be January the 12th, 8:30. We'd love to have you there and all rested and having spent a safe time with your family. Good day, guys, and see you soon.
Thank you, Fanny.
Thank you, Fanny.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy Christmas.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody.